Welcome to our newest lesson on the song, The Blue-Tailed Fly. Now this song was chosen because of the way that it was constructed. It was constructed in a very interesting way that allows me to, I think, with a very appropriately written song in terms of the way that, that it's structured, to answer a question that comes up, probably one of the top 10 questions that I get as a music teacher, which is some semblance of this. Someone will come in and say, why is it that I can notice when I make a mistake so easily? How come when I play the wrong thing, my ear notices it as soon as I do it? And I usually start out my answer by congratulating them for being able to hear a mistake. I usually say something along the lines of, consider yourself blessed that you can hear a mistake, because I've been doing this a long time and I have some students that can't hear mistakes. And you can't fix a mistake if you can't hear a mistake. So, you know, they think they're playing terrific, but which is fine. At the end of the day, you're doing this for you. But it is so beneficial to be able to notice that you did something wrong, because it's oftentimes not your fingers that are going to tell you that you made a mistake. If you turned your instrument off, if it's electronic, and you just started playing keys with your eyes closed, unless you could feel where the black keys were, then you might have an inkling that you're on a wrong key. But if you were to just play the keys with your eyes closed and not be able to hear it, and let's say you had headphones on someone that was standing next to you, but you couldn't hear what they were hearing, you wouldn't notice a mistake quite as easily as that person would, even if they're not watching. So it's a hearing thing more than necessarily a seeing thing or even a feeling thing. Okay? So we'll start there, that it has something to do with the sound that you're hearing. And what you're noticing is a bit of a discordance. Okay? We often speak about harmony. And in our beginner classes, we speak about harmony in terms of the left hand, how the left hand can provide harmony. It can also provide rhythm. Okay, we've spoken recently about how the left hand can even provide bass. But we, at the beginning of our program, always speak about harmony in terms of it being compared to rhythm. And harmony is something that the left hand does. But you can expound upon that definition when we speak about harmony. Harmony doesn't necessarily need to have anything to do with music. Probably sounds funny coming from a music teacher, but harmony is describing things that get along, things that have a comparable nature to them, things that work well together, okay? And this is the first step in describing to you why, when you do make a mistake, that it's so obvious to many of you. Now, since we've started talking about chords, let's start there. You have to play a chord in your left hand, and it could be whatever, okay? We'll start with the C chord. Now, if our C chord is set like that, it could be at the beginning of the measure, it could be in the middle, it could be at the end. It really doesn't matter. That C chord, more likely than not, is going to have a note underneath it. We have had instances where there were rests underneath that C chord, but most likely it's going to be a note, or a double note in some cases, whatever the case may be. So, underneath this C chord, there are particular notes that are going to sound agreeable with that C chord. And the three most agreeable notes that would match a C chord would be the notes comprised of the C chord itself. And we're familiar with those notes as being C, E, and G. So is it likely that if there's a single note underneath that C chord that is either a C, an E, or a G? And the answer is, yeah, it is. It's very likely that that's going to be the case. Okay? But it's not usually just a one-off thing. If there's not a new chord immediately thereafter, is the note or series of notes that follows that C chord likely to be a C, an E, or a G? And the answer is yes. If there's not a change in the chord, it is likely that the note or notes that follow it are probably one of those three notes. Now I'm saying probably, I'm not saying always. I never say always with music. How about before the C chord to kind of set us up to hear it? Is it likely that one of those three notes is probably played just before it? And the answer is yeah. It's very likely that that can happen. And what you're noticing here is a very stable structure, all emanating from the C chord. So it could be a C followed by a G, followed by another C. It could be a G with a G again, and then an E after that. It could be a C, and then a G. Whatever the case may be, whatever the combination is, those notes are going to sound good with that chord because they harmonize together. Why do they harmonize together? What did we just say the definition of harmony was? Things that are agreeable, things that have something in common. There's a common factor, a common trait which pulls them together, okay? And the common trait is the fact that these notes are notes in the C chord, so you know they're going to sound good, okay? Now let's say that my left hand mistakenly played one chord down from C. It's a very common thing actually for those using instruments that have a chord built in. They go to play the C and then they play one key to the left of the C because they're only using one finger for the C, and it goes down one key to the B accidentally. Your finger may not notice that feeling of movement, but your ear will. And your ear will because if this all of a sudden becomes a B in the middle of the box there, and these are the notes that are to be played underneath it, because that's what it says, they're going to sound terrible. They're going to sound terrible rather, because these notes do not match up with the B. Okay? What are our notes of the B chord? Well, the notes of the B chord, we have the B, the E flat, and the G flat, or the B, the D sharp, and the F sharp, whatever the case may be. Okay? Those notes aren't there. So are they going to sound good? No, they're not going to sound good at all. Okay? You're losing this structure, and everything kind of falls like a house of cards. That is a very basic explanation or example as to why your ear, if you're lucky enough to have an ear that's good enough to notice this, notices mistakes. It's because the chord is compelling particular notes to be heard in your head while it's being played, or the notes themselves are leading you to expect to hear a particular chord at a certain point. Okay? This obviously leaves us to question, well, if someone's writing a song, do they come up with a series of chords, a progression of chords, and then add notes to it? And the answer is maybe. Does someone write the melody first and then figure out which chords go with those notes? Well, that's a possibility too. It's all up to the songwriter. But there are great examples on the equipment that you're playing on at home, which gives you the scenario of the chord determining the notes. The left-hand chord makes the determination as to which notes should be played in the right hand. And if you're playing on a Lowry or a Yamaha Clavinova, you have features, one in particular that I'm thinking of, that does exactly that. The feature that I'm considering is the one that says harmony. It says harmony on the Lowrys, and on the Cadet it says harmony duet. It's one button. On the larger Lowrys there's more options. And harmony as well on the Clavinova. When you choose that feature, be it duet, trio, AOC, three-part harmony, country harmony, whatever the case may be, you may have a bunch of them. What happens? When you choose that feature, notes are added into your right hand. How does the instrument know which notes to add into your right hand? By you playing the left hand. If you didn't play the left hand, that button, whether you turned it on or off, would make no difference whatsoever. There'd be no connection there because it doesn't know which notes to add if you're not playing a chord. So you have to play a chord. You have to play the right chord. If you play the wrong chord, the additional notes it's going to add on your behalf in the right hand are going to be based on the chord, not the one you should have played, but the one you did play. Some of you have the option called Fake It on your instruments, and the Fake It button is very similar. For those of you that have the Fake It button, this would start out on the Lowrys. The Fake It button is a Lowry thing. On the Easy 4, the Fake It button gives you the ability or opportunity to improvise. It essentially improvises for you if you don't know how to improvise. Now, when we're improvising, there's one thing that we have to kind of have a plan with, and it's the chord. Because particular chords denote particular notes to be played, and probably more importantly, particular notes to avoid. So as I'm playing my left-hand chords, I have to constantly, if I'm improvising on my own, I have to constantly recalculate. When I change to a new chord, I have to recalculate in my head to figure out which notes sound okay with this chord and which notes do I need to make sure that I avoid. And as soon as I play another chord, recalculation. Play another chord, recalculation again. It's not an easy thing, and you have to think faster, the faster the tempo. Well, for those of you that have this Fake It button, you turn that button on, you can literally play one key in the right hand over and over again, the same key. Based upon your chord, it's going to play different notes, even though you're playing the same note, that all gravitate around the chord that you're playing at that given point in time. If you change chords, you continue to play that same key in the right hand, and it's going to recalculate and choose different notes to match the second chord you played, and then another set of notes for the third chord you played. And it's a really, really cool feature, but it just goes to show you that it's all based upon the chord. Okay? But again, a song can be written the complete opposite way, where the chord is determined after the notes. A melody line is played, and then the composer comes in and they say, okay, now we need to add some harmony. We need to add some left-hand chords for the keys anyways, left-hand chords. Which chords are going to sound right where? When we come back, we're going to take a look at one of the two renditions of the Blue Tail Fly, because this song, again, was chosen because there's a great number of places within the song where you can see why there is a chord in a certain point, or you can look at it at the other perspective and say why these notes are here and the chord is directly above it. Which were written first? I don't know. I don't know whether the chords in this song were written and the notes were following, or vice versa, but there's quite a relationship between the two. And this is, again, a great example of why it's so noticeable when you hit the wrong thing. Okay, so here is one of the two copies of the Blue Tail Fly. And you can hold yours in your hand, obviously, as I go over this. I may suggest using a marker or a pen, maybe a pencil actually, so that it's not so overt. I don't want you making any particular notes on the music here to throw you off when you're playing. So maybe in retrospect, another copy would be fine as well. You could always do that. But I'd like to start out here, because we made such a big deal about the key that the Village Tavern Polka was in the review. I'd like to speak about the key of this song, because there's pretty much no question that this song is in the key of G. The last chord is G, the first chord is G, the last note in the song is G, and there's only one black key to be played in this song, and it is the F sharp, which is the only black key in the scale of G. So all roads point to the fact that this song is in the key of G, and that's great. Okay, that is the first very straightforward thing about this song. We're going to take that to the bank. Okay, now after our first chord, which kind of establishes our key here for us, let's take a look at the second chord. I have a C chord. What note do I see underneath the C chord? And the answer is, well, I see an E. What note do I see after the E? I see another E. What do I see after that? I see a C. What do I see after that C? I see an E. What did I see right before that C chord on the first line? I see a G. What are the notes of the C chord? The C, the E, and the G. So you'll notice immediately upon you playing the C chord, you start to play, if we count the G before it, even a little bit of a preview, the notes of the C chord. This is on line 1, right in the middle. We see the same exact thing at the end of line 2. I see a C chord. It was preceded by a G, 2 E's that follow it, a C, and then an E after that. I, on my music, happen to circle just to remind myself of this comparison between the notes and the chords and how they really befit one another. Take a look at the first chord on line 2 of the first page. It's a G chord. What are the notes of the G chord? If I were playing them, it would be G, B, and D, right? What notes do I have to play in the right hand? The B and the D. So I have the G in the left hand, G chord, G, B, D, and then I have the B and the D in the right hand. Okay? How about on line 3, I have a G chord. I have a B underneath the G. Then I have 2 Gs. Then at the beginning of the next measure, I have 2 Gs and then another 2 Ds rather, and then another 3 Gs. So I could circle basically from that G all the way to the end of the line, because all of those notes that are played thereafter are comprised notes that would comprise the G chord. Now let's take a look at some of these D chords, because this is really cool as well. How about the D at the end of the first line? D chord. What are the notes in the D chord? Well, the notes in the D chord are the D, the F sharp, and the A. What are the 3 notes I need to play under the D chord in the right hand? The D, the F sharp, and the A. I see that same thing at the beginning of line 3 on the first page. Now, after the A at the end of both lines 1 and the beginning of line 3, I have a C note. The C note gives me the opportunity, if I so choose to take it, to play that D chord, if I want to, as a D7. Reason being that a D7 chord is comprised of a D chord with the addition of a C. So that C is basically granting me permission, if I so choose to do it, to take that D chord in those instances and make it a D7. If I get down to the bottom of that first page, beginning of the last line, D chord, F sharp and A underneath, and D's follow. Well, those are the notes of the D chord. The end of the line, the G chord, G and B. It's 2 of the 3 of your G chord right there, G and B. Okay? You look at page 2. There are so many examples throughout this, this song of notes and chords that are just so interrelated. And when you make a mistake, obviously it's a mistake. It wasn't something that you meant to do. That structure breaks down. And when the structure breaks down, you hear the breakdown. And that above all else is what is leading you, your ear, to say, listen, I made a mistake here. Okay? Now this song has double dots down at the end. I am not going to play this twice. I think it's long enough as it is. It's also, though, broken up into a few different portions. Obviously, the beginning of the song I'm going to call portion number 1. Now, I am not going to be changing tempo this week. I'm going to keep my tempo where it is. Having said that, the tempo is going to be faster than ballads and even some songs we've done that have been in the 100, 110 beat range or so. This song would likely be played with ragtime or possibly a Dixieland or bluegrass beat, and those tend to be played pretty darn fast. I'd say anywhere from between about 120 up. Some of those songs can get up to 200 beats per minute. I am not going to do that for you this week when I play it for you, but that is a potential that songs like this can be played that way. But I'm not changing my tempo. So wherever I put it, I'm going to leave it. When I play the song for you today, I'm going to play it at about 125 beats per minute, which is on the lower end of this style of music. But again, this is all your decision. You make that choice. Okay? Now, getting back to this song being broken up into a few different sections, because I'm not changing my tempo, I do want to maintain interest. I do want to maintain some excitement. And we do that by making some instrument changes. So the sounds that I'm going to be using would be sounds that would be used in this style of music. I'm going to start out at the beginning of the song using a honky-tonk piano. And there's only one place on the first page that's even bought me a split second of time to pause or to take a rest. On line 3, I see my one and only rest. When I get to that point, I'm going to change to the clarinet. So I started out with honky-tonk piano. I'm going to change to clarinet. That's going to get me to the second page where on the first line I see NC. That is signifying for me the point where the song begins to repeat itself. From that point forward, the song is virtually identical to the first page. So there I'm going to make my next change. I'm going to change to the trombone. And I'm going to use the trombone until I get to the one and only rest on the second page, which is at the end of line 3, where I will be changing back to clarinet, but I will be adding in the duet. So duet and clarinet at that point. And that's what I'm going to use through to the end. I am not going to abide by double dots. You are more than welcome to if you can, but I think you're going to find that this one is likely going to be pretty long on its own going through the song one time. Now, I will show you a few different ways that this song could be arranged. When we come back, we're going to start out on the clavinova. We'll move over to a Lowry, show you how you could potentially set a Lowry up to do this as well. And then we will introduce the more traditionally played rendition of the Blue Tail Fly. So here we are on the Yamaha Clavinova, and I've already preset some things here, but I want to walk you through that process just in the event that we're starting here from scratch. So I'm using a Dixieland Beat, and I want to show you where that came from. I went into my styles on the left-hand side, and I have a button that says Standards and Jazz. Now you can do this from the screen as well. You have all of these options you can choose from, Standards and Jazz being one of them. And you'll see Dixie and Traditional Jazz as one of the options under the sub panel section here. and Dixieland 1 is the one that I used. Now, you'll see here that it's going to come up at, well, it came up originally at 205 beats per minute. Actually, it might have been 215. I'd have to look back. But anyways, I brought this way down, okay? I brought it down to 125. That's where I want to be. Now, it says honky tonk upright. That came from, on the right-hand side, a section called One Touch Settings. So I have 4 buttons over there. Honky tonk piano is on button 1. The clarinet is on button 2. This is already preset. The trombone is on button 3. And then the clarinet with the duet, there's a duet with a jazz trumpet, but I'm just going to use duet for number 4 here. And I bring that up because those are the 4 sounds I want to use. I'm going to start out with the honky tonk piano. When I get to the rest in the middle of line 3, I'm going to go to the clarinet. When I get to the top of the second page where I see NC, right in the chord section, that's going to be my indicator, in this song anyways, that the song is beginning to repeat itself. And that's where I'm going to change to trombone before I play that B. And then finally I have one more rest at the end of line 3 on the second page where I'm going to change to clarinet with the duet. And that's going to be these 4 buttons. Now, if my right and left hand are right underneath the screen, which is pretty much where they're going to be, in a second we'll zoom out and you can see the full length of the keyboard. I don't want to have to reach all the way over to the right-hand side to hit those buttons to get number 2 and get number 3 and get number 4. So I'd like to show you something pretty cool. What you can do is if you go into your menu, you go to the option that says Assignable, and it's a picture of your foot pedals. So I'm going to go ahead and choose that. And you can choose either one of the 3 foot pedals that you have already, set down in front of you. I'm going to choose the one on the right, which would normally sustain, but a song like this that's played this fast usually isn't going to sustain much when you're using a background. If you're using just the piano, you might use it, but if I'm using a background, I'm not going to worry so much about sustain. So I'm going to go ahead and choose that, and I have all of these options that I can scroll through. I'm going to go all the way almost to the end. One that says OTS, which means One Touch Setting Plus. I'm going to choose that one. And now you can see that the right foot pedal is set on that. So now, here's my honky tonk piano. Off camera, you're going to see this screen change on camera, but off camera, I'm going to use my right foot. I'm going to step on that right foot pedal and watch what happens. It changes it to clarinet. If I step on it again, it changes it to trombone. Now, I didn't do that with my fingers. I did it with my foot. So again, I go back to honky tonk piano. My right hand and left hand are playing. And there's my change. And there's my change again. And my final change after that. So when I play the song for you, you're going to hear a seamless transition between those sounds that does not require me to pick my hands up and actually hit a button. I just simply set my pedal up to hit the button for me. And every time I need to change, I just stomp on that pedal and it changes to the next sound. So I'm going to reset the camera. You're going to have an overall view of the whole setup here, and you'll see I'm not reaching over to the right to get to that new sound. I'm simply stepping on the foot pedal, which I set to set that sound for me. Now again, I'd like you to watch this section over here. If you watch this red button, it's going to change to this position here. Just like that. And I can get it to change to 3, and get it to change to 4, and even go back to 1 just by stomping on that pedal. And if you watch the screen, it will change there as well. Here we go with the Blue Tail Fly. Now, how about on an instrument, for example, like the Lowry fanfare? Haven't played on one of these in a while. This gives me the opportunity not to necessarily use my foot to make the change, but I do have the upper and lower keyboard, so I'm going to use that to my advantage here. On button number 1, I have the honky-tonk piano. At the same exact time, the clarinet is on the lower keyboard. So when I get to line 3 and I need to make a quick change, I just move down. Now when I get to the second page, I need 2 new sounds. That's going to require for me another button, which I've already set. Okay? I memorize the same way here as I would have with my memorization of tempo. So you set your sounds up, you go memorize A, in this case number 2, because I already set up number 1. With the style, with the transpose, memorize off. So I have number 1 and number 2. Now with number 2, and this is subject to this particular instrument, but a lot of Lowry's, the duet does not work on the lower keyboard. It only works on the top. So I need the clarinet with the duet to be up here. So what I did was I put the trombone down here on number 2. Now this might seem a little confusing, but what I did that for is I start on the top keyboard with the honky-tonk piano, right? I go down to the lower keyboard for the clarinet. When I hit 2 and I need the trombone, my right hand's already here. It's already waiting here. And it's the one spot in the song where I don't have a rest. So my hand's already here. I'm only going up 2 keys, but the G is going to sound, this is in the middle of the first line in measure 3. The G is going to sound like the clarinet. The B is going to sound like the trombone. So the trombone takes over. Same level. I just reach up with my left hand after I played that G chord, and I hit number 2. I get to the last 2 lines right at that rest at the end of line 3, so figure lines 4 and 5. My right hand comes back to the top keyboard, and what's waiting for me there but clarinet along with the duet. And this is what we get. Okay, so before we go into the more traditionally printed rendition, I did want to just give a quick word on instruments that you may be practicing on at home that don't have the benefit of that memorize. I just went over some ways of playing the song, taking advantage of one button or a foot switch to get that next sound, and you might be saying to yourself, well, that's not something that I can do. That's all well and fine. What you do need to make sure that you do take the opportunity to do, though, is to preset your button options with the sound you'd like to come out of that button first. For example, there are some of you that don't have memorize, you have duet, but you have a bunch of options on that button. Okay? You want to make sure that if you're going to hit that button and you need the duet, you want it to come up first. So before you even begin playing, you hit the button. If there's more than duet on there, you scroll until it says duet in the screen, and you turn it off. And that way, when you need it in the middle of the song, you hit it, and it's ready to go. It's waiting for you. Okay? Same goes with the instruments. Okay, if I'm using honky-tonk piano, I have a bunch of pianos. I only have one honky-tonk, likely, maybe 2 if you're lucky, but most people have 1. Scroll through and find it. When it says honky-tonk piano on the screen, turn the piano button off, knowing that every time I go to piano, honky-tonk's going to come up as well. Okay? You can do the same thing with the clarinet, you can do the same thing with the trombone, okay? They'll give you the ability to set them. Now, they won't stay indefinitely. When you turn your power off, those are going to be gone. But you can set your sounds up such that when you need to get to them, there's a way for you to get to them a little bit more quickly. Okay? Now, we're going to conclude here with the more traditionally printed rendition of the Blue Tail Fly here. And the left hand is doing a lot more work. And I'm going to show you a way to make the left hand even more, give it even a little bit more work, fortunately, unfortunately. But I want you to hear both the way that it's printed as well as the way that a saloon-style barroom player might play this song as well. And it would require a little bit of a difference between the way that you see it and the way that you would play it. But I am going to play it the way that it's printed first. And the way that it's printed is pretty uniform. You have bass on 1, you got a chord on 3. Virtually throughout the whole song. That's how it is. And the bass tone, the chord is part of the bass tone essentially, or at least what I mean by that is it's a G and a G bass tone, a G chord, a D bass tone, a D chord, or D7, maybe one of the two, a C bass tone and a C chord, okay? That's what we're dealing with throughout the whole song. So it's not incredibly taxing in terms of figuring it out. It's a little bit more difficult to do. Now, when I play the song for you in the saloon type style, you're going to notice I'm going to double up the left hand. So instead of just having bass on 1 and a chord on 3, I'm going to be playing the left hand on every beat. And it's basically going to double up the speed, whereas the bass is going to be on 1, chord is going to be on 2 instead of 3. Because the bass is going to be on 3. Chord again is going to be on 4. So it's going to be bass, chord rather than bass on 1 and chord on 3. So it's going to seem, the second time that I go through it, that my left hand is going twice as fast, and it is. It's doing twice as much work, but that is traditionally how, as I said, a barroom style piano player, saloon style, would probably play this song. So we're going to reposition, we'll give you a bird's eye view over the keys, and I'll play it once through for you the way it's printed, and I'll play it through you another way, which would be probably closer to the way that you might hear this song if you were in an old Western saloon. Okay, so here we are with the Blue Tail Fly played traditionally the way that it's printed. Now you've noticed I have not doubled back. There are double dots at the end of this, but I haven't gone back again. I think the song is well long enough without having to do that. But let me show you how the saloon player would play this. So they would do this. Twice as fast in the left hand. Okay, so I'm going to do this a little bit more slowly so that you can identify some of these notes and break it down a little bit. But watch what my left hand does in comparison to what you just heard. It's a very difficult thing to do. So I'm just stopping here in the middle. I do not expect you to be able to do this, okay? To make that left hand move that quickly is a very, very tricky thing to do. It's almost a stride piano type method of playing. You really take advantage of your pedal because you'll need that extra split second to get to that next chord or down to that next bass note. But that is how that player would play a song like the Blue Tail Fly. Well, I hope you enjoyed the lesson this week. If you have any questions, as always, there's multiple ways that you can reach out to us. You can call us directly at the studio. The number is 401-277-9800. You can come visit the studio. The address is 1665 Hartford Avenue in Johnston, Rhode Island. We're in both suites 11 and 12, right on the first floor. You can send us an email. Our email address is info@keystofunmusic.com, or if you simply go to our website, which again is keystofunmusic.com, there's actually a chat box in there where you can chat directly with me. Happy to help with any questions that you have. We look forward to seeing you again soon.